Hello and welcome to October and to Victober. There's some tires in the back because I'm going home for Thanksgiving. Yes, it is Canadian Thanksgiving, so super excited for that. You know, that the genocide of Indigenous people and slavery and all of those things definitely go well with Victorian era. That is definitely a problematic part of Thanksgiving. Yeah, well, we'll talk about that too. Yeah, I have read The Mayor of Casterbridge, which was supposed to be our month-long group read, and I definitely finished it last night. It was really good. It's definitely my least favorite Hardy so far. I did enjoy it, and it's interesting because he wrote it serialized, which meant that he left a lot of like dramatic choop in it, and I think that is really compelling in the ways that it did. However, he didn't like linger enough because he added so much in there that like you like the twists and turns. Like, I was compelled by them. However, I never got like connected to the characters because like they'd be like really angry and then like forgiving and then betrayed and then like in love, and then like they're switching so much, and we never have like those deep nuanced moments of like, let's like sit there and like ponder these things. Thus we get to the time where like I don't feel anything for these characters. Like, I really liked Elizabeth Jane, but like even Elizabeth Jane, like she's absent for large parts or like just switches kind of off screen, and like her personality changes so many times that I don't necessarily see the full reasoning behind them, because a lot of the time we're seeing it from other people or we're exploring those things. And yeah, I really wanted to love this book, and it's definitely like a solid like 3.5 stars. It's not a 5-star, even though I was super compelled all the way through. And it's actually something that Thomas Hardy reflected on his own. He thought that he put too many dramatics in it. He like added too many events and too many things rather than focusing on the characters. So it's not just me, it's actually the author critiquing it as well. But I definitely enjoyed it. I'm really glad I read it. I love his characters, his angles of romantics. It has to take the cake. Like, my sarcastic rendering of the ways in which Far From Madding Crowd and like the love in there is hilarious. My roommate, who has never read Thomas Hardy, finds it hilarious because I like showed the fencing and the kissing. And the fencing and the kissing together is just my favorite thing ever. Frank. Oh, Frank, you... So many words about Frank. Anyways, these had some similar things that happened in there that were a little dramatic and ridiculous, and like, okay, so these people are connected by marriage and love and betrayal and all of these things. And it's pretty much about these rivalry between these two men, and it's this emerging friendship and dynamic between these two men, surrounded by the ways in which these women develop and how their relations to the men change. It is definitely not a book that focuses on the women. The women are either, like, I feel like the connotation and like descriptions of the women change so drastically. Like, all three of the women, like the different ways that they are portrayed throughout, I feel like drastically changes depending on how the men need them. And yeah, they were the most interesting characters for me. Oh, also Elizabeth Jane and her books the whole time, because like she is poor, she grows up in Canada, yay girl, and she ends up coming back, and like she has like kind of rural accents, and she's not as sophisticated as her father is, because the guy sold his wife in a drunken bar because he didn't want to see any, and she just went off with the guy that he sold her to, and then raises their daughter with her, and then comes back after she is widowed, and they reunite. And yeah, he is really disappointed and like starts kind of barraging her about the ways in which she speaks. So she starts reading and like she spends so much time trying to improve herself, and it's like every time we see her room, it's just like it's sprawled with books, and she's like, yes, I mean, having trouble with like the Latin pronunciations. And I was like, my nerd girl. I love it as someone who had like really bad dyslexia and really struggled to learn how to read and how to speak well, and like the ways in which that made in me the desire to improve myself and to read a lot. So Elizabeth Jane is just great. I wish like we need a retelling or something where it really focuses on her. But way back now, I'm about an hour and a half into David Copperfield, which is a 34-hour audiobook. I'm not gonna be even done it on this trip. Maybe there and back, and also some like, you know, fall wanderings in the field maybe, because my parents live in like a forest. So maybe that will happen, maybe it won't, but I'm tentatively enjoying it right now. I love the Uncle Peggotty dude who's just like really happy about taking in all of his like orphaned nephews and nieces, and then like the widow of the guy who like also drowned. Like, everyone in his family is drowned, and he just takes them in and takes care of them. And the only thing he's sour is when people question why he has all these people, and I'm like, oh man, I love it. So there's a squirrel right there. That is so close. Anyways, yeah, that's just my beginning of my Victober. I need to leave because we are going to beat Toronto traffic today. I swear it. So I'm now 20% into David Copperfield. I am also past Toronto. I have done it for the first time in like this last several times I have gone through Toronto in like an hour and a half, and it is wonderful rather than 4 hours, which makes me so happy. I'm feeling very feverish and faint. We love chronic pain. David Copperfield is keeping me company. I am in the middle things of his childhood, so I won't spoil lots of things, but you know, as it goes, he is a man who is poor and down on his luck, with less parents than he ought, as you know, Charles Dickens has. I need to look up his life because this is apparently autobiographical. I don't know if Charles Dickens' father died before he was born or died when he was young and his relation with his mother, but I feel like that will be a cool historical thing. I know more about his wife and stuff and his mistress later in life, but I don't know much about his young life. So this is interesting. He has gone to school, had some experiences there. I really love the way that it talks about how he has trouble learning because of the ways that, like, when his stepfather and his step aunt, I guess, that when they are like looking at him and constantly having like crosswords at him, he struggles to read and he struggles to write, but otherwise he's reading like Don Quixote and like Tom Jones and like these massive books. So very clearly he is not a bad reader. He is just struggling with their focus, and that because of the abuse that they give him, of course he's having trouble actually reading. I really love how that shows the analysis of how like temperament and environment actually has so much more on like learning. Like how many people struggle with learning because they have a learning disability or need different things. Like I couldn't read until I was 12-ish. I kind of started reading when I was 10, and then it was like 12 or 13 by the time I was like actually reading. And yeah, like I would not, if people had just called me dumb, like I wouldn't have been able to ever learn. And I think often people who have no learning disabilities whatsoever are, because of the harsh treatment or the way that people treat them, because they're afraid, they struggle to read. So I really love that the ways that that's looking at the way, like Dickens is known for his compassionate representation of children who are down on their luck and mistreated. So I'm appreciating that level as well. And yeah, I feel like I need to read things to go along with it because there's just a lot of information and a lot of summarizing and stuff. But I'm enjoying it. He also the fact that he at 10 years old is just sent into London to take care of himself, and he's talking about how like he only has a certain amount of money and he's hungry, so he'll like buy a pastry in the morning, but then he won't be able to like eat supper because he has no money left. And the ways that like he obviously is like not old enough to be taking care of himself, but he's a 10-year-old, and the ways in which that treats. So it's really highlighting the ways in which Victorian children are made to grow up way early and manage things that their brains are just not able to do. Like they're not at an advanced level where it's like, you know, you're 11 or 12 when your brain starts like, you know, going into everything's developed except for your frontal lobe. Your frontal lobe is still not developed until your 20s, and it's like, you know, digesting like impulse versus like rationale versus like long-term versus short-term, and like those things are like really important to make decisions. And of course, when you're hungry and you see something in the morning freshly baked, you're going to want to eat it, even if that means you can't have dinner, even though it's going to be a more substantial thing. So I'm enjoying this. I'm excited for his teenage years that are coming up and all of that. And I'm home in the fresh leaves of my family's house. My family has always nicknamed our place anything to do with maple because we live surrounded by maple trees and maple everything, and we collect maple syrup in the fall because it's the kind of Canadian family we are. But I am a good chunk. I'm like 13 hours into David Copperfield, and I am liking it. I have read several books that are around 1,000 pages as well. You know, not many because they're 1,000 pages long. However, I realized that none of them were singularly based on one person and wasn't third-person omniscient shifting narration, which is my favorite narration ever. I love it, I love it, I love it. It's what I write in, it's what I prefer to read in, and everything. So I can definitely tell that this just being David Copperfield's life, rather than like Anna Karenina, which yes, is about Anna Karenina, but it's also about everyone else. Or like Vanity Fair. Love Vanity Fair, but it got kind of boring at the end, and it kind of has like 2 or 3 main point of views. So like I can definitely tell that I would like this better if it wasn't just David Copperfield, because these characters are interesting and stuff, but we only ever get to see them for the little parts and moments and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm enjoying it. I don't know if I have like 20 hours left in it. Well, we'll see. Like I am intrigued and I'm like drawn on, but I'm not sure where it's going. And like apparently Charles Dickens did not have an outline for this. He just wrote and he wrote and wrote and was like, okay. And he was like, okay, I'm going to write until I have more thoughts and serialization. The one thing I didn't mention when I was talking about the Mayor of Casterbridge is that it actually reminded me a lot of a book that is like 2,000 pages long that I have not read, but I've definitely listened to the musical and read many, many descriptions of it. And I don't want to like talk about a lot of it because I think that some of it is spoilery. However,
The main thing is that we have Henchon and Valjean, and both of them begin the story as very, very poor, down on the luck people, and through the beginning become these people that are very well respected and literally mayors. Like Valjean is also a mayor, and they're kind of hiding their past transgressions, and then they also come upon women that have been shunned because of interesting dynamics and that which they have wronged in very different ways. Like Valjean is, at least the version of Valjean that I know, is much more innocent of it than Henchon is. But then they also come across daughters that way, and it's very, very interesting to see the different ways in which these characters are dynamics. And as it goes on, we have some other things, and I think that Fairfray and Marius could be companions or contemporaries in the versions, at least in some ways and stuff. And yeah, it's very interesting to see the ways in which these characters things, because I think they're very similar. Les Mis would have been written earlier, but they would have been around the same era. So yeah, I'm excited and thankful that I have fall and that I have all of these things. I'm excited for more Victober, and this is the most like Victober-y thing I can imagine.
I'm on my way home, and I have Doris Splenlow, and her depiction is just driving me crazy. Like, her as a character, I don't think is very well written. I've heard a lot of things about how Dickens gets better at writing his characters as he goes on. And this is kind of his middle of his career, but like, you know, at the time he's kind of debating how, you know, people treat her as a plaything, and sometimes I treat her like a plaything, and I'm like, that is all you are doing. Like, all she's doing is like convulsively sobbing at everything. Why are we writing women like this? However, the Splenlow aunts, hilarious. I find them just absolutely hilarious and great in their depictions. That is like the irony and stuff like that. It fits Jane Austen, like the ironic, the characters that are just really particular, and like being like, you must discuss this for half an hour, and just like leaving and then coming back. Uriah Heep is just, oh man. I'm like, he's one of the characters, like, a lot of people will say this about like Umbridge, where like, it's not only like he's a villain, like he's just disgusting. You don't want to spend so much time with him. Also, my thing is that I have no reason why this book is so long. I am 64% in now, which is 23 hours into this audiobook, and like not a lot of things have happened. I have like no idea. And like, again, I like slow paced books, but like, you know, we're not getting like the most inwardly like developed character. I don't know, and maybe it is for more Victorian era and stuff. I am being honked at. Welcome to the end of the first vlog of Victober. If I look like I am dying of tiredness and fatigue, it is because I am. I am so tired, but I've been enjoying my books. You know when you like love books and you want to talk about them? The idea of vlogging or even like writing a review is so overwhelming because of pain. So normally I have chronic pain. I still have chronic pain, but this weekend I had the most adorable injury you could ever have. So on like Friday, we were like setting up the air mattresses and like getting everything ready. And I have 4 nephews, and one of them is 3, and he's jumping on the air mattress and just goes, he's like really big into hug attacks, and he like jumps into my arms with like dramatic force from a thing that like is bouncy. And he clocks me straight here with his full pressure of like 40 pounds to here. And yeah, it is swollen and very hurt. I spent most of Saturday in the hospital, which was not fun. Like, I was like, do I go? Do I not go? But I was like, I was having trouble breathing. I was having chest pain, and it was swollen, and I had a little bit of hoarseness. So I was like, I should get it checked out. Like, it's probably nothing. It seems like it's nothing. I still feel like pain, especially when talking. And I feel like my voice is slightly more hoarse than normal. But yeah, that is my experience of my most adorable injury that I will probably ever have. Injury by hug attacks is just really cute, but also painful. And when I was in the hospital, I had 3 books, and they were all 1920s books, so I ended up starting Whose Body by Dorothy L. Sayers. And this was really delightful. I've been on an Agatha Christie kick lately, and this was kind of right up the same valley. And it's a 1923 book, which begins with like Lord Peter Wimsey. And he's very funny. I'm not sure, he's supposed to be like a wonderful sleuth. I'm not sure if I like love him. Like, literally at the beginning, he's like wanting to go to an antique shop, and he's like, you know, I could go to this antique sale, or I could find this body, and you're never going to find necessarily a dead body naked in a bathtub. more than one time in life, so I should do it. And yeah, like that's the story. It's like, I think like the description begins with like a man naked in a bathtub, not an unusual thing. However, if he is dead, and meanwhile another financier who is also Jewish has like disappeared across town. And I'm not interesting conversations on Jewish representation, especially pre-World War II, and I'm like, okay, I'm not sure how comfortable I am or how this is going to turn out. I am 75 pages in. I haven't picked it up since, just because I've literally just been like sleeping other than my drive home. It definitely feels like the nice flavor for this season and really lovely. I finished David Copperfield, as I had begun to talk about before, and I feel like my brain has not been like fully here enough to process. I have a lot of thoughts on Dora. I have a lot of thoughts on anything. I like travelers. Like I like Tom. Tom is a great character. Several of the other characters are great, and I'm excited for the 2019 adaptation. Yeah, I've listened to a lot of like books and things. Like Katie is amazing, and I listened to her reviews and her thoughts on it. And I do agree with many of them, but I don't ever think that I'm going to be like a Dickens super fan. Like I don't find him personal enough. And I don't like first person narration generally. Like I am a third person narration person, which I know is strange. I love more characters. And David, just I felt like I could see his absence on the page. He's a character who like is there all of the time, but like not there. Like he is the one narrating, but like, you know, so much of like the retrospects are cool and stuff, but like so often he doesn't even like let you in the scenes. And in the scenes you do let him in, you're like, is this the scene that I needed? It's very interesting. Definitely the Mayor of Casterbridge is heading up the top of my list. I am currently going through some Victober videos, which I'm hoping to film when I'm like energized enough to look like a human being. It's going to be great. And yeah, I am excited. Like one of my thoughts with David Copperfield is I was like, oh, I want to read more Dickens, but also maybe not yet. Like that was very long. And yeah, I think I'm gonna not take a break from Victober, but I might like read some of the sonnets from the Portuguese and stuff. But I delayed Middlemarch so that I wouldn't run into trouble of not finishing these ones. So I think Middlemarch is coming from my library in about a week. And I might read some sonnets and finish Whose Body. Hopefully, I never finish my books on time, but I'm really hoping that I will. I have Night on the Living Rez, which is a collection of short stories by an Indigenous writer. And I have The Last White Man by Mohsin Hamid, who I love. Exit West and The Reluctant Fundamentalist are two of my favorite books. Like, I love them so much. So I'm really excited, but also worried about this book, but I hope it's good. So I have a few books of that to read in the meantime. And yeah, that is my close to Victober, the first vlog. I am very proud of myself because I've been participating in Victober for like 4 years now, and yet I've never like consistently read more than like 2 books. I think last year I read like The Woman in White and Tale of Two Cities, but like I didn't like keep the momentum, and I feel the momentum and I'm proud of myself. So this is great. This is great. Sometimes you just have to do it a few times before you actually get consumed by it. And I think like allowing myself to read audiobook rather than like trying to make myself read physical, because I love reading physical. Obviously, that's how I read most of my life, but I have dyslexia. I'm an incredibly slow reader. So I find that I often get overwhelmed, or I'm a mood reader and switch on to something else. And that's why I always have like 35 books on my TBR, not because I'm not enjoying them, but because with my dyslexia, like it takes forever. Like I remember when I finished Mansfield Park and I was like, I have like 150 or like 200 pages left. I'm just gonna push through. My pushing through was like 3 days. Like it was literally like 30 hours of straight reading to finish like 150 pages. Like it was brutal. Like I am not a fast reader. So that was one of the things where like I wish I could be a person who like sat down and read a book in like a few afternoons, but I can't. So I feel like with my desire and my like needing to hyper focus, like it's not healthy for me to always read physical books. Anyways, this is a long distraction, but alas, I am going to do another Thanksgiving dinner. I had Thanksgiving with my family, but I am back in Kitchener and I'm making Thanksgiving with my friends, which I'm really excited. It's a Wednesday now, so I'm gonna make that. And yeah, I don't know, I hope we have some good discussions as well about this, because it's one of those holidays that I obviously do not agree with the moral implications and the beginning of it and the ways in which it has allowed and perpetuated like good genocide, where it's like, no, we were friendly and happy and they like taught us things and they're simple and kind and like the land, which I guess can be true in some cases, but like Indigenous people are not a monolith, and the ways in which we tell the, you know, first Thanksgiving story is incredibly problematic. And I don't know if it can be fully separated from that, like, or we should fully separate it. Like, we should not ignore the history there. And yet having a holiday in which we all sit around a table and talk. I think Canadians are less associated with the story. Like, you know, my family didn't even go around and like talk about Thanksgiving. Like, the only reason we're there really is to sit around a table and talk. But just because we're not perpetuating that history doesn't mean that history isn't ingrained in there. And yeah, I feel very conflicted about the ways in which we celebrate Thanksgiving, but I also don't want to remove a time in which people come together. You know, it's one of those things where, like, I don't know, how can we make sure that we are not perpetuating the same myths and stereotypes that allow people to believe that Indigenous people are not people of the present, that they're not people that, you know, deserve a story, that they're not there. And yeah, I don't imagine that the decisions that I make or that my beliefs are like things that are good. If you're someone in Canada, the United States, and celebrates Thanksgiving, or you don't celebrate Thanksgiving and your decisions around that, I would love to hear your thoughts. Yeah, I'm very conflicted about the fact that I celebrate Thanksgiving because I know of its history. And yet, and maybe it is selfish that for me, I don't want to like not celebrate a holiday that allows me to see my family and to sit around a table with my friends, because like the cooking and the making of the food and all of that is what I love. So those are my thoughts on Thanksgiving, and I would love to hear your thoughts and stuff like that. And yeah, happy Victober, happy reading and writing, and get yourself a sweater that is bigger than yourself so you can curl up and feel nice and cozy this Victober.